Good morning, everybody. Sorry for kind of disappearing for a day. Had a lot of stuff going on. My son was working downtown Nashville. Work, all that good stuff. I did want to let you know, if you clicked on this video, obviously you're planning on reading some of the Joyce Bova book. Okay, this was the regular book that was released in 1997. Joyce reached out to me, and she sent me the Don't Ask Forever, My Love Affair with Elvis revised and updated book. Very sweet. She wrote some nice things in here. I don't know whether you can see them or not. Maybe I can find a way to reverse this, but I don't think so. But basically it just says, thanks, Joe, and for keeping Elvis alive. Elvis is forever. Continued success with your show. Very sincerely, just Joyce Bova. You should shut that off there. I was recording last night. So I'm going to read from this. She asked me to stop reading this one. Okay? So this is going to be different. Probably different. Maybe some of the stuff that... well, let's just read it. Okay? Let's read it with an open mind. She seems very, very sweet. Very responsive, and you can get her book, this book here on Amazon. So go look for it. If I can find a link, I will put it in there, or you can message her on Facebook. She also, I think, has a P.O. box you can send a check, and she'll give you an autographed copy. So here we go. A few comments from the Elvis world. Don't Ask Forever is a great book by a great storyteller and by a great person, Joyce Bova. She's a genuine, truthful person, about as real as you'll ever meet, and her authenticity shines through on each and every page of her story. Joyce had a unique vantage point from which to see Elvis Presley in ways that the fans could not see him. But fans reading Joyce's words will feel like they're watching the story unfold right before their eyes. Patrick Lacey, author of Elvis Decoded, A Fan's Guide to Deciphering the Myths and Misinformation. Then Alana Nosh, author of The Colonel, Extraordinary Story of Colonel Parker, and all the other books she wrote, says, in a genre awash with sugar-coated memories, false histories, and sensationalism, Joyce Bova has written a most remarkable account of her time with one of the most foremost figures of the 20th century. As fresh as when it first appeared in the early 90s, Don't Ask Forever is a frank and riveting look at a man out of control. Oh, geez. You know we don't like hearing that, do we? A man out of control and a woman whose love was second only to her sense of survival. Essential reading for any serious study of the man, and a fine read for fans as well. Marshall Terrell, co-author of Elvis Still Taking Care of Business and Sergeant Presley. Elvis Presley could have had any woman on the planet, and the ones he chose to spend time with, history shows he selected wisely. Outer beauty is what first draws attention, but inner beauty and intelligence is ultimately what kept his attention. Joyce Bova was one of the most special women in Elvis's life, and Don't Ask Forever is a moving and realistic account of their roller coaster years together. This well-balanced book gives great insight into how strong and smart women, how a strong and smart woman fell for the king of rock and roll, and vice versa. Marshall Terrell. So there are friends' comments at the beginning of this book. So it's really nice that she puts her friends' comments into this book about Joyce. I'll read them, right? Let's be fair and read through this book. And then we'll interject opinions and thoughts, of course. Joyce was my first serious dance partner. You could say we squeezed out the last beat of the disco era after a very satisfying partnership that lasted for about 10 years back in the epicenter of discomania. Joyce is a vivacious lady, makes a sincere and loyal friend, and is a terrific dancer. I attribute my first world professional championship to her influence, as we both sought out interesting and difficult aerial acrobatic moves to add to our performances. I then transposed them into the international ballroom world with great success. I knew of Joyce's relationship with Elvis long before her book was ever released. I vicariously enjoyed her account of her time with Elvis, and through her book added significant links to the Elvis legend. A couple years after our dance partnership ended, my new partner and I were selected to perform at a special event in Moscow in 1989. Among the celebrities invited were Red West, who was better known as one of Elvis's Memphis Mafia. While riding on the bus on the way to perform at the Russia Hotel in Red Square, I happened to sit next to Red. I took advantage of this encounter to ask him questions about the Memphis Mafia in general, and Joyce and Janice in particular. This slow-talking bear of a guy and I shared many laughs as we exchanged stories about the twins and about Elvis. Joyce's book is a fascinating chronicle and an easy read. You'll be enchanted by the Bova twins just as Elvis was, and come to understand how uniquely they fit into Elvis's psyche and the missing pieces to the puzzle that made Elvis feel more complete. David Savoy, Shirts, attorney at law, and Theater Arts World USA dance champion. And then there's a short little comment here from Margaret Rath, attorney at law. As your friend since adolescence, I see no point in expounding on Joyce's moral character. And that goes for Janice too. A lifetime of camaraderie speaks volumes. Although I could speak volumes, I know I should be brief. So I will be brief and take this public opportunity to thank them for more reasons than they know, and especially for all the excitement they vicariously added to my life. Most memorably, being with Joyce at Elvis's Baltimore performance was awesome, particularly when he acknowledged her from the stage. But meeting Elvis in person during one of his visits to D.C. was really special and something I will never forget. Margaret Rath, attorney at law. She says, for my twin, with special thanks to Patrick Lacey, Alana Nosh, Marshall Terrell, and all my love to Mark, my husband, my hero. Mark Bova, her husband. Please indulge a proud husband. It's obvious to see how charming and beautiful Joyce is, but few people know her inner grace. I was a recently discharged soldier, unaware of what to do with my life and suffering from PTSD. I happened into Joyce's studio and was immediately captivated. From years of getting to know her through dance, friendship, and then falling in love, she literally altered the course of my life. Because of her belief in me, she gave me the direction and purpose I needed to succeed as a civilian. Her consolation and moral support was more helpful than any Army therapist. Joyce's encouragement led me out of the desert and into a position of respect and responsibility. I am now an executive for a Fortune 500 company in charge of hundreds of people. I owe the man that I am today to my wife. I also owe much to the person I now proudly call my sister, Janice. Now, we're still not into the book yet, but this is a note from Joyce. Joyce begins. I have often wondered, what would entice someone to write a personal memoir? My reason for writing Don't Ask Forever, when I did it, was to correct the many erroneous accounts of certain events publicized during the time Elvis and I were together. Among them, most notably, is the Presley-Nixon meeting. Why have I not been included in every telling of that encounter? Especially after I came out with my story, and since so many people knew the truth. It's a mystery to me. He never hid me. It was my idea to be discreet. To recap for my book, writing President Nixon was definitely an afterthought for Elvis. The fact is that he came to D.C. specifically to find me and to apologize for his boorish behavior the last time I was with him in Vegas. Come on, does it make any sense that a man would have a fight with his wife and manager, storm out of the house and say, damn, I have to go see the president? And by the way, it was Jerry Schilling who found me in my office and got me on the phone for Elvis on that fateful day on December 21st, 1970. And it was Sonny West who was with Elvis in Suite 506 at the Hotel Washington when Janice and I met him that evening. Another fabricated story is Elvis's stop in a donut shop. Elvis was not alone at that shop, and it was not during his first trip to Washington, but on his second visit. As related in my book, Elvis, Sonny, my twin, Janice, and I were driving back into D.C. from my apartment in Maryland on December 30th when Elvis spotted the Amy Joy donut shop on Bladensburg Road at New York Avenue, triggering an urge, he told Ben, the limo driver, to pull in. We had barely come to a halt when a group of ghetto guys started crowding around the limo to see who was inside. Recognizing that it was Elvis, pandemonium set in. Well, that had to be something, right? So Elvis told Ben to go inside and get a bunch of donuts. Elvis then got out of the car against Sonny's strong protest and proceeded to interact with these guys on their turf. Well, they loved every minute of it, and so did Elvis. The rest of the narrative about his taking out one of his guns is true. I can't really say that full word because of YouTube. Thus, unsure and nervous as how my book would be received, I was thrilled with the reviews and accolades, particularly by some Elvis aficionados. I was even more delighted with the complimentary comments from numerous Elvis biographers. And when I heard that Peter Guralnick, esteemed music historian, referenced Don't Ask Forever during his book tour to corroborate some episodes in his acclaimed Elvis biography, Careless Love, I was elated. Now, I have made it a practice not to read books about Elvis. However, going through my personally signed copies of Peter's book and also Baby Let's Play House by Alana Nosh, I learned way more than I needed or even wanted to know. Regardless, I greatly admire their work. I see now, though, how naive I was back then, but I probably would have fallen in love with Elvis anyways. Now, I've got to say that I'm not a big fan of Alana Nosh's books, or Nash. Doesn't mean that there's not some great reference material in there, or perhaps a lot of truth to a lot of it. But when you dissect a person and you focus on the negatives, which I believe she does to sell, sensationalism to sell, you can get a distorted view and you can lose sight of the heart. I don't personally like her books. That's my opinion, and I know y'all have an opinion as well. So I do feel bad Joyce reading these, because in some ways it would cheapen what she had with Elvis to read books about Alana that Alana Nosh has put out personally. Because I don't believe there's 100% truth in all that. There may be a distorted amount of 20% truth or 50% truth, but when you do that, you don't quite know. But anyways, let's get back into the book here. Of the billions of people who walk this planet, the few who touch our lives do so for a reason. Now, all these decades later, I feel I have a keener insight as to why Elvis and I were meant to meet. This brief glimpse into my history, which I've included here many, many years since that hot Vegas night when I first gazed upon those piercing blue eyes in an attempt to decipher the psyche as it pertains to Elvis and me, and particularly the mystifying twin phenomenon that connected us. Elvis and I met not merely by chance. It was no accident that his front man picked me out of that line in Vegas, waiting to see a show. My girlfriend and I were selected the 2 previous nights by 2 other headliners. As it turned out, the choice was ours, not theirs, and my choice was Elvis. At first blush, the chances of my meeting, much less seriously dating Elvis, seemed to defy all odds. It could be said that I was the luckiest girl in the world to have had all the stars align and be graced with the ultimate act of serendipity, an opportunity to be part of Elvis's life, even if for a moment. In retrospect, the result was inevitable. Destiny was working overtime to make it occur. Our meeting happened to coincide while I was in an unfulfilled relationship that I needed a reason to abandon. What better excuse than the attentions of the king of rock and roll? because Elvis was the quintessential white knight who was definitely wooing the lady. So she gives us a look into her life at that point in time, which is very interesting. I don't think that the first book or the actually had that, which is why I'm reading from this one. Okay, it's very important from Joyce's point of view that I read this one and not that one. So maybe some of the stuff that's in that book that we started reading already is not even in this one. You know, we may still look into that book and read part of that because it's important to kind of see how stories do change, whether it's the author that did that. She had diaries. That's why she wrote these books. She wrote diaries. Okay, here we go. Excuse me. My status as an ordinary human being and not a starlet was part of what he needed. I was not in competition with him, and I certainly was not reticent to be his cheering section, which he loved. My association and his fascination with law enforcement, politics, and the military did give us a strong bond. And I was an identical twin, so bingo. Now, I have since learned of the many women, yet I believe I would have been the only one uniquely qualified to soothe his qualms and satisfy his intangible needs as they related to his deceased twin. Were it not for his substance abuse problems, which caused him to be on a downward spiral even before I entered his realm, maybe things would have turned out differently. Regardless, Elvis seemed to have touched and altered my life at every turn. That's a good point that Joyce makes. Out of all the women that he was with, she had an identical twin, which in a sense would be healing. There's something called the imago theory. If you don't know much about it, there's a book. Let me see what the author's name is. This is a very, very, very good book for anybody to read that's trying to figure out why their relationship is unfulfilling or maybe damaging to you. I read this when I was very young. I would say 24, 25. Let me see. It's Imago. God, what's the original author? But it's IMAGO. But the idea is that you pick people to try to heal you from your past. Let's just say your father was abusive. Okay, you pick a guy that's going to protect you. That is not going to be abusive. But if for some reason that guy raises his voice, it's 10 times worse because of this reason why you picked him. And so if you don't understand stuff like that, then maybe he raised his voice for a good reason, upset at somebody that raced in front of him, or a real problem in your relationship that's very hurtful. But if you can figure out what you're trying to find in a relationship and you find that person, it can be very healing. And so I think that's what she's talking about there, is that she would be uniquely qualified because she was an identical twin, something that would have perhaps healed him. He could have found some healing in Joyce and Janice that he didn't have with his brother, who passed away at birth. This brief, excuse me, this brief collage into my history focuses on the major impacts that Elvis had on my life and throws in a bit of my background as well. Now, if I had chose one lucky word to describe myself, it would be, if I had chose one word, it would be lucky. Just incredibly lucky. Without a college degree or an extended formal training, I managed to hold a pretty impressive job for several decades and have been able to stay in the dance domain even longer. I also have been blessed with exceptionally good genes and excellent health that have been richly rewarded in many ways. The decisions I made along the way I felt were proper, even the more controversial ones, so I cannot harbor any regrets. I have been in love and have been loved more than once, and the best and luckiest part, I was born an identical twin. Of course, there was Elvis, Not so much a lucky encounter, but more a preordained one. When Janice and I were born, it was a complete shock to our parents, who were expecting one big baby boy. According to the doctor's educated guess. Now, she wanted twin girls her entire life. I believe she actually willed it. Mom kept being told only one baby, but when she went into labor, the nurse asked if twins ran in her family because she thought she heard 2 heartbeats. This was the only time twins were ever mentioned. Twins did not run in our family except for a distant aunt who had stillborn twins many years ago. That's another thing that kind of like in the family would have been a healing, cathartic thing for Elvis to know that. Maybe she shared it. I don't know. So Mom did give birth to our identical twin girls. The doctor also estimated Mom's delivery date as January 8th. Though scheduled to arrive on Elvis's birthday, we came a month early on the 12th of December. Weighing in at only 4 pounds each, too small to be released from the hospital, we ended up being Christmas presents. Unfortunately, we were born into a very dysfunctional family. We had an agnostic father and a strict Catholic regimen forced upon us by a mother who sorrowfully suffered from a multitude of mental and emotional maladies throughout her life. For those of you that don't know what an agnostic is, I believe the definition is that they don't believe in one way or the other, or maybe they believe that there is a God, but they don't. Believe that nothing is known or can be found of the existence or nature of God, or of anything beyond material phenomenon. So to have a Catholic mother and an agnostic father had to be very difficult. I'm not going to be able to get this first. That's just fine. This will be a part 2 series of the introduction to this book, because this is maybe a part 3. There's quite a long. This is great. This is a great introduction. So we get to really know Joyce, because we're going to be reading her book. And I think that this is a wonderful thing Joyce did, putting some background in, maybe seeing that what she's done since then, and then we'll get to the book. And I don't know how much, I'll have to message Joyce how much different this book is going to be than the original one. I can share something here. The demo album Elvis signed to me in Vegas on August 16, 1971, noting our special song that he dedicated to me from the Baltimore Civic Center stage on November 9th, 71. The flip side of that special album, you can see where Elvis scratched out 3 songs he said were not good enough yet, which is Love the Life I Lead, He Is My Everything, and looks like Padre maybe? I'm gonna share this. And then let me go ahead and mark that page, because I have to stop. Unfortunately, I've got a meeting. But let's see. I'll try to take some pictures of these and maybe post them on the YouTube channel, maybe as posts. I know we can do that, so you can see it. All right, well, TCB TLC, this is Joe Sims Rivers Photos. I'll try to be back with another video today to make up for a lack of videos yesterday.